just that happiness is not something that you can pursue. When people say, I just want to be happy, okay, but you can't pursue happiness. You can't find it. It's always moving, it's always changing. Happiness has to ensue. It has to come from something that you're presently doing. In other words, happiness is something that you find. It's not something that you attain or achieve. The will to pleasure is a Freudian term from the psychologist Sigmund Freud. Curiosity, how many of you guys took or are taking psychology? Yeah. Okay. So the will to pleasure comes from Sigmund Freud. The idea is that he believed all human activity is geared towards pleasure, that we're just pleasure-seeking little monsters, and that everything that we do is geared towards the things that we want, and that we're just pleasure-seeking monsters. That's juxtaposed by another thinker named Friedrich Nietzsche, who we may have mentioned once or twice, 1,000 or 2,000 times in this class, who believed that all of human activity was a will towards power, that all human activity was geared towards us trying to accumulate more power. So even like our desire for wealth, it wasn't so that we can enjoy it, it's so that we can do something with it, so we can grow our own personal power. There's a third view, which happens to be from Viktor Frankl, which is the will to meaning. So those are the three main views: will to pleasure from Sigmund Freud, will to power from Friedrich Nietzsche, and then the will to meaning from Viktor Frankl. And we'll talk more about that in the third quarter. But you can gather what that's about. That's the idea that all human activity is geared towards trying to find some meaning and some purpose for our life. And so so for Freud, he believed that we just wanted to get and for him the pleasures were pretty much just biological. He didn't believe in anything like a spirit or a soul or anything immaterial. He believed that we were just physical creatures. Frankl, pretty similar, but he also says that we recognize that we have a mortality to ourselves, which means that we're going to die. So our life is very short. No matter how long your life is, it's very short. Even if you live for 100 years, let's say, that's still a very short amount of time. And so what do you do with that time? Well, you could waste it, in which case you may as well have never been born. But there's also a drive in us that we want to feel like it mattered, that we were here. You know, why we want to accomplish things? Because we want it to matter that we were here. We don't want to go through all of this pain and all of this suffering and all the difficulties of life, and then at the end to just die and then fall into unconsciousness as though we never were. So we're looking for something that makes it so that our lives matter. And that means that we need to find something that gets us up in the morning. An absolute pessimist, like if you're an atheist and a pessimist, and those two things aren't necessarily the same things, and you believe that that we're just like a cosmic accident, that we're a cosmic joke, and that once we die, our memory goes away, and we never should, we may as well have never been born. It's difficult to get up in the morning. And we know this because there are philosophers who've held this point of view, and they typically don't live very long because you don't really have anything for which to live. What gets you up in the morning is what gets you up in the morning. In other words, you have to do something, and not have in the sense of you being forced necessarily to do it, but have in the sense that you have something to do. You think about the days in which you have nothing to do. Do you do nothing, or do you fill that day with things to do? And there are two different kinds of people. There are people who have a lot to do on certain days, and they just blow it all off and they make nothing of the day. And then when they have nothing to do during the day, they do nothing in that day. And then there are people who, when they have a lot to do in that day, they find ways to even do more. And then the days that they have open, that they aren't doing anything, they'll fill it with things to do. And that doesn't just have to be work. It could also be experiences. One of my students, one of my former students, she graduated 2 or 3 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago now. It's interesting. She rides motorcycles and works a little bit so she can save up money because she really likes skydiving. She's always jumping out of planes and driving really fast on her motorcycle. Although her motorcycle doesn't go very fast. It's kind of a beginner model, but you get the point though. She goes as fast as she can on that motorcycle. It doesn't really coincide very well with the person who I knew when she was a student. That's because she grew a lot from that time until now. She points to it. And so a lot of her life isn't more her work. She works so that she can so she can jump out of planes. She just really enjoys it. It gives her life meaning. Going to work every day gives her a purpose. She gets to save up money, even though it's a job she doesn't really like. There's a reason for doing it that's just beyond the very little money that she gets. So what I suggest is that when we look at these things that we need, that we want, I don't know, something I think about, like, imagine if you got all of the things that you wanted in life. The things that you wanted. I wonder, do you think you'd be a better person?
No.
That was quick. Yeah. So he was living for that cocaine.
He was a drug addict, yes.
Yeah. And this is bad because, like, well, he enjoyed it though, right? No, but he wasn't free. He was addicted. He couldn't do otherwise. He's chemically directed to behave in that way. And it's funny because it even overrides his biological love for his own child. So I ask you, so what did he really want in his life? Well, he wanted money. Why? So he could party. He wanted cocaine. And then he became an addict to it, which means he wasn't free to do anything else in life. And so, yeah, so did getting a bunch of money make him a better person?
No, it made him worse.
It made him a worse person. It made him a worse father. Yeah, you ever think about that? Imagine if you had a whole bunch of money, the kinds of things that you would do. I remember when I was in a band years ago, and we were negotiating with a record label. It's a pretty big label, and when you're initially doing it, you debate over what are called points. A point is just a percentage. So you argue over what percentage of your record sales you're going to get. I don't know what deals look like now because they're way different now than they were back then. But it used to be when you first got signed, you'd get like 3 or 4 percentage of your 3 or 4 points of your record sales. So 3 or 4%. We were negotiating and we wanted to get. They were offering us 3 at that point, and we were like, well, what's 1%? So we carried offer with 2%. So we'll take 1% lower, but in exchange we get access to corporate attorneys. So essentially, we get access to your lawyers. And they're like, for what? And my drummer and I were like, we don't know. We have no idea what we'll need them for. But we know one thing: we're going to need them.
If something ever happens.
When something happens. Because I knew myself at the time, and so did my drummer. And I called him Crazy Brandon because he's crazy. He literally has a 5150. If you know what that is, you know what that is. He has a 5150. Yeah, he's been locked up in a psych ward before. He was just having a bad day. That's what it amounts to. And for whatever reason, the Pomona SWAT team felt like they needed to intervene. It's a difference another time, though. So we were asking for just 2%, but with that 1% difference, when we do something, we get access to your attorneys. And they were like asking us, well, what are you going to do? We had no idea, but we knew one thing. You give us millions of dollars. You put us on a stage in front of a lot of people. We're going to do something. We don't know what, but we're going to do something.
Yeah, audience is probably drunk.
Yeah, and you make that exactly. You make that audience drunk, and you give us a bunch of power over a bunch of people, and feeling like we're above the law. We're going to need attorneys, man. We knew that much about ourselves. I wonder how many of you would say, that wouldn't be me, I'd be a good person. Maybe.
He's a liar.
Yeah, probably not. Because one of the things I can tell you, I can promise you about money is that money doesn't change you. And they say money changes you. Money doesn't change you, dude. Money amplifies who you presently are.
You change yourself.
Well, you change yourself because you have the ability to be who you really are. And so if you're a generous person, you're going to be generous if you have $10 million. If you're a stingy person, you're going to be stingy with $10 million. If you're kind of a crazy person with no money, you're going to be a crazy person with $10 million. You're just going to be who you presently are, but just amplified. And so it doesn't really change you. I've seen it lots and lots of times. It just amplifies. I've never seen a person I know lots of wealthy people. I've never seen a wealthy person get wealthy and then all of a sudden change who they were at their core. They're exactly the person that I knew before that. They just have more responsibilities and they're amplified. That's all it is. And so I guess that would be a question. Like, if you were you right now, but an amplified version of yourself, would being wealthy make you a better person? Would it make you a worse person? Would it make you in the kind of neutral? I don't know. If you had any of these things right now, Snickers bars even, You know, would it make you a better person? Even happiness. Like, I wonder, like, if I were to ask you what happiness is or what makes you happy, that's such a, like, it's so transient. If I were to ask you, for example, somebody, what's your favorite song right now? Just somebody, anybody. By Dying Fetus. Praise the Lord by Dying Fetus. Favorite song right now. What was your favorite song, let's say, 5 years ago? Yeah, isn't that interesting? Something by Ice Cube, 5 years ago. Today, something by Dying Fetus. You see the point? What made you happy 5 years ago is not the same thing that makes you happy today. The thing that makes you happy today is not going to be the same thing that makes you happy a year from now. Happiness is something that's constantly shifting in our lives. If I ask you what your favorite thing to eat today is, it's probably something different from what your favorite thing to eat was 5 years ago. Imagine if I asked 10-year-old you or 8-year-old you what your favorite thing to eat in the world is. It's probably changed over time. The point is just that happiness is not something that you can pursue. When people say, I just want to be happy, okay, but you can't pursue happiness. You can't find it. It's always moving, it's always changing. Happiness has to end soon. It has to come from something that you're presently doing. In other words, happiness is something that you find. It's not something that you attain or achieve. We can attain joy, that's true, but when we're trying to figure out what that happiness thing is, and so many people aren't happy, and that's a big thing because they haven't achieved the things that they think that they need in order to be happy. And the example I think I've probably mentioned before is Mike Tyson. If you go to 20-year-old Mike Tyson, who's the world heavyweight champion at the time, he unified all 3 heavyweight titles at only 20 years old. Guy was making what, like $30 million a fight, something like that, $25 million a fight. And if you asked him what made him happy, he'd take you to his house, he'd have all of his people around, he'd have his tigers around, he'd have these mansions, he'd have all the material wealth in the world, and yet the guy was still angry all the time. And if you asked him if he felt like he was missing something, he would have acknowledged at the time he was, but he didn't know what it was. Turns out what Mike Tyson was missing was pigeons. Yeah, after he was broke, lost everything, and was sleeping on his friend's couch in Brooklyn, I think it was. Yeah. And he goes up on the roof, and he's hanging out because somebody has a pigeon coop up there. Guy's got nothing. Guy had hundreds of millions of dollars. Now he's left with nothing. He's having to sleep on his friend's couch. And his name is destroyed, his reputation is destroyed, he's out of prison, he can't make money back, he's not allowed to fight anymore, he can't do the one thing he can do. And so he starts hanging out with pigeons, and he starts raising pigeons, starts training them. And then at a point he comes to, he says, he's actually happy for the first time in his life, raising pigeons.
Oh.
Yeah, if you go to 20-year-old Tyson and told him, bro, leave all of this behind and come raise pigeons. Joy, happiness, true. Well, what is it what's the it at the bottom of all of that? Control over his own life, lack of chaos, peace, and having some level of control over his own life. With all the money he had, chaos, constantly, chaos. It's peace, man. That's what it is. And it's difficult to find peace with passion. Believe that. It's difficult to find, if you can find a relationship that gives you peace, okay, but it's a tough thing to do. I guess what I'm saying is that if you drew a Venn diagram of the things that make you happy today, do it again do it again in 6 months, do it again 6 months after that. I wonder how often those things change. And then if we're trying to figure out how often the things that we want are in alignment with the things that we need, I wonder what a Venn diagram of that would show. But what Frankl's getting at here is something, by the way, does this picture seem strange to anybody? Anything that picture stand out to you?
I was going to ask, why is there barbed wire?
Now, why is there barbed wire behind him?
Concentration camps.
Yeah, he's standing in front of Auschwitz, a concentration camp. Why? How would you describe his expression? He had a smirk. Hey, why is this guy standing in front of Auschwitz smirking? Why does he think that standing in front of this barbed wire fence is funny? Because you know what's funny? Everything. If you can look at it just the right way. This guy was a concentration camp survivor. He was in concentration camps for over 3 years. I think it was 3.5 years. And he was in Auschwitz. He was actually he was in the concentration camps when the Allies were advancing. So every once in a while they have to pick up all their stuff and they would be run over to a different concentration camp. Before he goes in, he's engaged. He's a neurologist. He's a psychiatrist, and his fiance is picked up at the same time. Long story short, his whole family is wiped out in the Holocaust. Even his fiance, he's the only one to survive it. And when he's in the concentration camp, he's in there with this psychiatrist's mind. He's trying to figure out what is it that has some people surviving and other people not. And he realizes it's not the youngest, it's not the strongest, it's not even the smartest people who survive. The people who tend to survive in concentration camps are the people who found some level of meaning, some level of purpose. And that's interesting because it points to the fact that no matter where you are, you can find meaning and purpose. There is no meaning or purpose in a concentration camp. You're given tasks that are like, here's a big pile of rocks. Move these rocks 100 yards over that way. And once you've moved all the rocks over there, move them back over here. They're given tasks like that to do. There's no meaning in the suffering. There's no purpose in the suffering. And if you feel that way, he mentions this thing this condition called give-up-itis that they would notice in people, which essentially was that a person would wake up in the morning one day, not go out to work, just lay in bed and just chill. Now, when you do that, you know you're going to get beaten and all that. But when people would take that approach, he knows that they would be dead within a couple of days. They would just give up on life. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm about to die, so I'm going to lay here. It was, I'm done living, so I'm just going to lay here until I die. And you notice that people, however, who survived were the ones who found a reason to get up every day. And typically that had to do with living for other people. I have to survive. Because if I don't survive, that person over there doesn't survive. I'm their support system. So even if I want to die, even if I want to quit, I can't because that person needs me. And so therefore I have to wake up every day and be here for that person, to show up for that person. So that tells us something about what we need in life, even if we don't realize that we want it. Yeah.